From the Salty Nerd Studios in Las Vegas, this is, of course, the Alpha Critic.
Alpha Critic.
All right, today, ladies and gentlemen, we have, for the first time ever on Alpha Critic, guests. Who are these guests? Oh, nobody in particular, just my good friend here, Shane Montgomery from the Popcast.co.
Or just say the Popcast is good. Yeah.
The Popcast, okay. We, of course, have my good friend Matt Kadish from Salty Nerd. This is his beautiful studio. And the legendary, the genius, Chris Gore. If you don't know who Chris Gore is, that's him.
Well, there you are. Yeah. I'm stuck with Film Threat is my thing. So there you go.
Film Threat.
Yeah.
Film Threat. If you're not subscribed to Film Threat, the YouTube channel, if you're not subscribed to Salty Nerd, if you're not subscribed to the Popcast, you got to subscribe to these YouTube channels. I mean, they're, what do you call, like, you know, the bread and butter of the nerd world, of the pop culture world at the moment. So, Chris Gore, I met you last night. We hung out. We had a little bit of a chit chat. We discussed old films from the 1930s.
Oh, yeah.
Our love of The Thin Man
Yeah.
and William Powell. And I suggested to you that Citizen Kane is not the legendary film that everybody thinks that it is, but the better film is, in fact, the great Ziegfeld.
First of all,
Yeah.
I almost recall our conversation. we had a really good time last night.
That's what happens when you go to a film theater with a bar.
Right, exactly. So yeah, I think I've always thought that Citizen Kane is overrated. What Citizen Kane did is how many people have tuned out now? I thought they were going to talk about Star Wars. Star Wars. Come on, you guys. Talk about Star Wars.
If anybody questions this man's nerd cred, show him your watch.
Oh, well, yeah.
His watch band is Batman watch band. Yeah.
There you go.
It's beautiful.
And all my stuff, everything I get. If there's a nerdy option, I'll get it. I literally have a pair of barbecue tongs that are a lightsaber that I got at Star Wars Celebration years ago. I'm like, well, I need a pair of barbecue tongs for the barbecue. You know, your barbecue and stuff. It's like, why not a lightsaber version of that? I'll do that. But no, I've always felt that like Citizen Kane is overrated. It's an overrated film. It's like one of those ones you kind of have to see in film class. What that movie did that's brilliant is it wrote the language of movies. Yes. It told you and storytelling. All modern storytelling in terms of cinematic storytelling came from that film.
I'm not sure that's exactly right. Some techniques for sure.
But many techniques.
But here's the problem. I feel like that was, for sure, that was a film that inspired a lot of other filmmakers.
Right.
But at the time, I feel like Citizen Kane was a sort of, if you've not seen The Great Ziegfeld, it's a William Powell film, but there are tons of stars in that movie. Really beautifully made film. That was a more popular film at the time that it came out. Right. Then they made Citizen Kane, a less popular film, but the critics, they said, you know what actually is better than The Great Ziegfeld? It's actually this film called Citizen Kane. That's actually the superior film. Critics have this way, I mean, you see it with like Oscar-nominated films. Yeah. It's like, Oscar-nominated films are never films that people actually like. You know.
In particular, this past year. Yeah. Oh my God, man!
Damn critics.
It was just bizarre this past year. How could so many movies that no one had seen? I did an Oscars live stream with a bunch of familiar faces on YouTube, Gary Nerdrotic, Paulie Latino Slant, among others. And I'm like, no one. I asked everybody who came in how many of the Oscar-nominated films, the 10, had you seen? And it was like 1 or 2.
Yeah.
That was it. Yeah. 1 or 2. And that, I think, is pretty average for most people. I had seen all 10, including All Quiet on the Western Front, which I think was amazing.
Good movie.
I was very lucky to see it in a movie theater. Most people didn't.
No.
Had you seen it in a movie theater, it would have changed how you think about it. But I'm not a fan of this rule that Netflix is like, yeah, it's on Netflix. It's an Oscar movie. An Oscar movie, you know, that people don't get to see doesn't mean it's a popular movie even on Netflix, you know?
The last popular film to be nominated for a major Oscar was Braveheart. After Braveheart, it just kind of went crazy. They were just like, oh, let's pick boring films always.
If you want to track the data, there's a really interesting statistic that you can track where when you look at, they tracked like the box office nominees or the nominees for Oscars and box office, and they correlated it. And as you see, like the Oscar nominees in the box office went like this because they were nominating movies that didn't do well at the box office.
It's weird.
And it used to be that there were at least like several popular movies.
Yeah.
In fact, the movies that were nominated for Oscars were not just Oscar-nominated films; they were movies people liked, and it took time to actually physically go see in a theater. I don't really like these rules where it's just like it can play on Netflix, and Netflix is like, yeah, we'll play it in a theater for a week in a couple places.
All right,
not enough.
Everybody's favorite 30s and 40s film. We'll get past this real quick, and we'll go to more interesting modern stuff.
30s and 40s movies. I mean, you have to go back to, the greatest film that you can't watch anymore, which would probably
Casablanca?
be... No, I would... Well, Casablanca was good, but I think with Rhett Butler and...
Gone with the Wind.
Gone with the Wind is probably the best.
I may actually... I'm not sure 100% if this is true, but for a long time it was true. I think until like Titanic or something. It was adjusted for inflation, it was the best, the highest grossing film of all time.
I think it even still is.
It may still be, adjusted for inflation.
Yeah.
Matt, you got one?
I want to say Scarface, like the old James Cagney.
Oh, the old one. Oh,
yeah, the original one. I don't know if this is the right one, but I just remember James Cagney, like it's a torrential downpour. He like falls down on the street and he looks up to the sky and he's like, I ain't so tough. And then he dies. I don't know if that was Angels with Dirty Faces or if it was Scarface. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but that moment in that movie has stuck with me.
Gangster films.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Okay. All right,
films.
Chris, what's your favorite 30s, 40s movie?
I mean, look, I got to go with the classics: Gone with the Wind,
Okay, yeah.
Wizard of Oz. I mean, those
Wizard of Oz.
had profound impact on me when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Profound. It was because might be a little older than some than you guys here. Back before VCRs even.
Yeah.
Okay, I used to record movies on cassette audio tape and listen to them.
Oh, wow.
Later, which
We actually talked about
we
that
had a whole
last
conversation
night.
last night of recording, movies or TV shows on cassette. But also, like, it was an event. There wasn't like Gone with the Wind, those movies, West Side Story, they were on like once a year.
Yeah, it's true.
Once a year. And can I tell you a quick weird story about that? So once a year, the family's all around. You'd always sort of like be in your pre-pajamas or your pajamas as a little kid because you'd fall asleep by the end. Or it was a 2-night event with Gone with the Wind, some of these films. And it was awesome. Popcorn, boom. And when there was a commercial, you had to run. There's no pause button. You ran, went to the bathroom, and you came back. You can't miss anything, right? As a little kid, when I watched these movies, just imagine little me. I hated movies.
Right.
I hated movies. My family thought this was funny. They thought it was cute.
I don't understand. Why would you hate movies?
Okay, so I'm like 3, 4 years old, 5, 6 years old, and like I hated movies. And they were like, and I hated movies. Why? Because they weren't real. And I thought they were lying to me. Ooh. How did I know they were lying to me?
Which is true, actually.
Which is true. Why did I feel that movies were lying to me? Mm-hmm. Because at no point, at any movie that I saw, West Side Story, Gone with the Wind, Wizard of Oz, no one ever took the time to go to the bathroom. Not at one
That's
point.
An interesting perspective.
No pit stops on the yellow brick road, so to speak.
The Tin Man was
read
going
into
the
that
bushes.
Well, I think because my mother taught me to read very, very young. I was like 3 or 4 when she started teaching me to read. There was ingrained in those lessons this idea that the things that you're reading aren't real.
Right,
It's a story, Right. I always kind of knew that. And I never was told that Santa Claus is real. I was always told this is a fictional story. So I never had that experience as a kid of like, I just knew that it was just like fun. I knew that. So I never had that experience. That's fascinating to me.
Well, let me tell you where that led. So I'm sitting here, I'm like, these movies, they kind of bug me. My father, when I was 5 years old, took me to a retrospective screening of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Man. Take a 5-year-old to that movie.
Well, but hold on. I would say that's not a good movie for a 5-year-old. Like,
It's visually spectacle.
It was
is a visual
like it's the first movie I remember seeing in a theater.
Okay.
It was a retrospective screening. I think it was at the Dollar Theater. Science fiction. I grew up like my dad and I just loved talking about NASA stuff. It was all about NASA, and he was totally into.
But that's like real science. You like
real
the real
science,
of space travel.
Right. So we went to see 2001: A Space Odyssey, and the movie freaked me out, and I'll tell you exactly why. In the movie, one of the characters goes to the bathroom.
Oh,
And I had never seen that in a movie before,
Okay.
where it was acknowledged
Yeah.
that we have like these types of concerns,
Yeah, yeah.
right? I mean, not only did they go to the bathroom, they ate in the movie.
Yeah,
You're right.
Do they eat in Wizard of Oz?
Because it was novel to see that in space.
Right.
So they could depict an ordinary thing like that, and it would be still interesting.
Right. But as a kid, it just freaked me out because they were doing human things that you didn't see fantastical characters like the characters from the Wizard of Oz do. So I then became obsessed with movies where people go to the bathroom in the movie. And it's not the last time that Kubrick would do that in a film. In Eyes Wide Shut, you see Nicole Kidman. Heartbreak feels good in a place like this. Take a little tinkle.
Yeah.
Right in front of Tom Cruise's character in that movie. She just sits down to tinkle. It's kind of a thing. You're in a long relationship.
Yeah.
You may need to tinkle in front of each other at times. But it was interesting. And then I've come to find out there are whole websites dedicated to lists of scenes where people go to the bathroom in movies. I'm not making
Can I psychoanalyze you for a quick
Please.
second?
Yeah, I find it interesting that Chris Gore
I'm
has
not
a
even
bathroom
done.
fetish.
It's
in
not really
movies.
a
It's not a fetish.
I don't think of it
It's
as
like
a
a
fetish.
weird-
Yeah.
He's weirded out.
But
by
it's about. Let me tell you what it's about. It's about. This is what it's really about. This is why I love independent film. Independent films
Well, can
are
I
more
guess real quick
truthful.
before you say it?
Sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think that you have a fetish for brutal honesty depicted in film.
Bingo. Brutal honesty, which to me you get out of independent films. You get out of movies that are more the Oscar
Raw reality.
art films. Like I love those.
You know what
movies.
film I like for this more than anything, even though it is kind of ridiculous? Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
Taxi Driver is so effing brutal, but it's real. I mean, there is a dark underbelly just about in every major city in America, and they really explore that.
They're doing, oddly enough, right now as we speak, they're doing a pop-up activation of Taxi Driver right now in New York City. It's called New York City. And
a little bit of reality. Yes.
The Taxi Driver experience.
yeah, it's called New York City now.
Just walk down the street
it's
in
just
New
called
York
normal
City.
New York City.
I thought you were saying a real legit thing. That's
No,
funny.
I
That is a funny
lied.
thing.
But-
I got it. It took me a second.
But I love things that are real, like real emotions, real, and you can do that in fantasy. I think you can
Of
do
course.
that in fantasy. You can have so. Then I learned later, upon discovering this, I repeated this story to a friend. That's really weird. He goes, "Do you know there are websites dedicated to this?" And I look, I don't have a piss fetish. I know that's a thing. I don't have that much.
Showers.
I don't have that much German in me. But one thing I come to find out is, can you name the actor that more than any other actor has gone to the bathroom in movies? A famous actor that everyone in this room knows. Who has done it?
Is it the guy from Jurassic Park that gets eaten by the
Jeff
the
Daniels.
Jurassic?
Nope.
Jeff Daniels.
Nope.
Of course
Matt,
we
care
don't
to
know.
guess?
Of course we don't. Of course nobody here knows that. I mean, maybe Matt.
I'm gonna say Harrison Ford.
No.
Okay, who is it?
Tom Hanks.
Oh, interesting.
It's in the Green Mile. It's a plot point.
Oh, you're right. He has a
He,
urinary
he
tract
goes to the
infection.
bathroom in Castaway
Yeah.
on the plane. He says in Forrest Gump, "I gotta pee."
Right. Yeah.
Like so,
Yeah,
it's
that's
weird. And if you look at these other movies, there are other sort of going to the bathroom references. I got to go to the bathroom. I don't know what it is with Tom Hanks. If you write a scene in a movie where Tom Hanks's character has to go to the loo, there's a real likelihood that he'll do your movie.
Well, I'll tell you what. Writing to go to the bathroom, I think it may not be a major indication,
Right.
but it's at least a subtle indication that the writer is interested in somehow depicting realism,
Yes.
the realistic nature of the human condition. There's this
Yes.
trope in movies where people don't pay for their taxi.
Right.
Like, they just get out of the taxi and they leave because it's boring to see
Right.
somebody, oh, do you got change? Okay, you know what? Actually, just keep, whatever. Like, all that's boring. Why show it? So they never do. They never show people going to the bathroom. But sometimes adding these little details into films just really does help you to, suspend disbelief.
Well, then there's
Right.
the opposite end of that, where filmmakers actually put fecal matter on the screen, like Rian Johnson did with The Last Jedi. And it's a real problem because I don't want to watch those movies.
Well, and you got to remember that when you use the restroom, it also makes you vulnerable. So it's another emotion that a director or somebody can put into the movie So when you're going to the bathroom, you're vulnerable.
Well,
Something
it's
can
also
happen.
like in Psycho during the shower scene, like the vulnerability of being naked.
Right.
And
Pulp Fiction is probably the best example of this.
Yeah.
Pulp Fiction gets shot on the toilet.
But see, when you look at like a filmmaker like Quentin Tarantino, yes, his stuff is fantastical, but it is rooted in a reality, and so that is the thing that I realized like really appealed to me, which is why I started a movie magazine called Film Threat that mostly focuses on. I mean, our primary focus is independent film. Yeah. We cover the other mainstream stuff too, but I mean, look, we cover
movies. And
that's
how you got your start, right? This magazine.
I started it right out of high school. I had worked on a little fanzine. See, at the time, zines. If I could explain to the audience what zines or magazines are like the internet, but on really, really thin slices of wood. Right. And people would read them with ink printed.
You mean
this joke is not landing?
No. Yeah, he had to explain.
I was thinking of my next question. I was waiting for them to laugh. I'm thinking of the next question because I got to like host this thing.
It'd be funny if we were a little younger. I think we would have got that.
Yeah, but okay. So you guys remember magazines?
We read books,
but zines were like photocopied zines. You would make a zine, and Film Thread started as a zine. I was in college at Wayne State University and started
the term
this
zine means like independent magazine, not published by like a major publisher.
Correct. A zine is like it's a small magazine, so to speak. But Film Thread did eventually evolve into a international magazine.
Yeah,
legit, real magazine, practically.
Good. All right. Speaking of talking about movies and TV shows and pop culture, I'm going to ask you guys all what you think about the newest stuff that's come out that everybody's talking about. This one's a little bit delayed, but what do we think, Shane? What do we think about the infamous Mandalorian season 3?
Oh, yes. Let's go on a journey and let's tell a different story every episode that eventually never gets us to where we need to go.
That's weird, right? I mean, what the F happened to that?
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that the character playing Din Djarin, Diego, what's his name?
Pedro Pascal.
Pedro Pascal. Yeah, the other guy.
You said Diego?
That's Andor.
Okay.
So I was like, I get them confused sometimes, and that's awfully racist. But, but I do love them. I love them both. But if you notice,
Diego Luna, right? That's
right. Yeah. And he actually wasn't in. He actually wasn't the Mandalorian at all this season. So it was just his voice. He was never on set the whole
Which
time.
I kind of suspected would happen eventually anyway, because why come to set if you're never going to show your face?
Well, rumor has it it's a really big pain in the butt for him to put on the stuff. So he was struggling.
Yeah, and he's a big time actor.
Now he is. Yeah. Movies. But The Mandalorian was interesting. I really liked the first 2 seasons. I liked also season 2.5, which we like to call the Book of Boba Fett, where
at least the 2 episodes that were Mandalorian essentially episodes.
Right, and I think Tamura's pretty mad about that. That's been out. We were talking about that last.
Yeah, actually, he did some kind of conference in Australia where he was complaining or something like that.
Yeah. So I mean, they ended it, and interestingly, I think they're trying to get the character of Din Djarin out. And it's going to be focused more on, the overall Mandalorian society.
I joke that like the title of the show changed from The Mandalorian to The Mandalorian, meaning like all of the Mandalorian, like the Jews. That's like what the show is kind of about.
That's a good
it's
point.
like all of the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
As if the word Jew without the S was plural and singular.
Right.
And you'd go, and you had one character called the Jew.
Right.
And it was about him. And then you started talking about all his friends, and then it became the Jew as a collective group.
It literally is like that. When you look at like the second half.
That's not a joke. That's like literally what's happening.
That's what I mean.
That's a fascinating thing. This is why you're the legend that you are. That is such a perfect perspective. The way that I look at it is that they've been focusing on Bo-Katan so much,
right?
That I assume that it's been taken over by Filoni.
Right.
I feel like Filoni's taken over because that's his character from the cartoons, right? So I feel like it's become his show, and he's like, no, I want to showcase my girl here, and it's like, okay, but why don't you just make another show about her? I don't understand. I mean, I'm sure Disney would be like, oh yeah, throw money at it. This is a known character. But for some reason, they just made this show, which we all want to see Din Djarin's story, about Bo-Katan, which I don't really, to be perfectly honest, I never saw the cartoons. I don't really care about this chick. She's very cardboard in this show. She's like just like a cardboard cutout of a strong female character. She just doesn't have any family. She doesn't seem to care about anything other than, being the leader of the Mandalorian. I don't understand. I don't get why they took this turn, but it's Disney Star Wars. They have to ruin everything.
Yeah, they're good at it. They're really good at
Throwing away money.
being bad at television.
All right,
That's the feeling I get.
Let's move on to something that's a little bit more positive that I've only watched 2 episodes of. Matt, we'll give you first crack at this since you didn't jump in on Mandalorian. What do you think of Picard season 3?
So I have a bit of a controversial take on Picard season 3.
Let's hear it.
We're going to have a fight right now.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I think the first 4 episodes are excellent.
Oh, really? Because I've only gone through episode 2, and I don't see how it's so amazing. But somebody told me that about at episode 4, that's when it gets good.
Yeah, so the first 2 episodes of the season are kind of set up for the next 2 episodes. Episode 4 is kind of the end of like the first mini movie of the season.
I see.
Then the next episodes 5 through 8 are also pretty good. I had some problems with episode 9, and I felt episode 10 is a little bit overrated, but it was still pretty good. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, my take on season 3 of Picard is like a 7. But
that's actually pretty dang good compared, like if you consider season 2 was a dumpster fire.
Yeah. I mean, it's a 7 compared to the other seasons of Star Trek that we've gotten.
If you're comparing it to just television in general, maybe a little bit more.
For me personally, like I just feel like I got my hopes up that Star Trek had turned a corner with this episode, and then something happened in episode 9 something happened in episode 9 of this season that kind of made me realize that this is a fluke. And Star Trek's probably dead for the long term, and that got me depressed. And
Matt's being a little bit careful.
Yeah,
no spoilers
I gave up on Star Trek because of this season.
Really? Okay. Yeah. Well, that is definitely a departure from what most people are saying. Shane, do you have an opposing position here?
Well, I think Chris actually said it best earlier when he said that great filmmaking or great movie making has to do with emotion. It has to be real. And that's the thing about Picard season 3 is if you're a TNG fan and you go back and Star Trek's great, but it was a week by week, episode by episode, and you kind of got this look at these archetype characters. And in Picard season 3, you see these fully fleshed out version of the characters 30 years later who've had all these experiences, and so we actually get to kind of all of us grew up with these characters in some way. So now that we've seen this culmination in the continuing final story, I mean, you got to think about it. The Star Trek TNG movies like screwed up. The finale of Picard season 7, which was actually All Good Things, was a great finale, and then the movies kind of screwed it up because they kept going. So having this additional final season, actually wrapping up the present and putting a big bow on it, I think has really done well for these characters, and hopefully they keep making more. So.
I literally just watched Wrath of Khan last night, and they do the same thing where it's like, let's catch up to these guys many years later. Right. It's Kirk's birthday. They're talking about getting older, and Spock's like, man, what are you doing being an admiral? You got to be a captain again. Right. Like, that's your calling. A very, very emotional film. I forgot how it's actually a brilliant film. If you haven't seen Wrath of Khan in a while, go back and see. It's really a classic of cinema. All right, so Chris, give us your take. What do you think about Picard season 3? Let me just throw this out here real quick. I've only seen 2 episodes, so let me just set this up. I felt like all the old school guys that I was able to see in this, which was only a couple. It was only actually Picard and Riker, I think, right, in the first couple episodes.
Right.
Oh, and Crusher, Dr. Crusher. They were great. They were just like their old selves from the show, which I watched when I was a kid. But all the newer characters, all the newer actors, for some reason, felt like they came out of musical theater. They were a little bit overacting. They were a little bit theatrical, and I'm just thinking, why are you doing this? So I'm not sold that this is the redemption. But again, only a couple episodes in, they're setting things up. I'm still hopeful that it's going to be as good as everybody says it is. What's your take?
Well, first of all, I agree with Matt. I do think it's an anomaly in the sense that we got one good season of Star Trek, and it's been, I can't even remember the last great Star Trek we got, but this is it. I watched, I attempted to watch Discovery. I gave all those shows a chance. I watched Strange New Worlds. I watched Discovery.
Wow, you even watched you were watching everything.
Well, no. Like a couple episodes. I think I watched the first 3 episodes of Strange New World, watched 4 episodes of Discovery, watched a couple episodes of Picard. could not finish it because I was so incensed.
Because it isn't Star Trek.
It isn't
really.
Star Trek,
Yeah.
and the people don't respect the legacy.
No.
What we got with Star Trek Picard season 3 was something that respected the legacy of the old,
Yep.
created something that was new characters like Captain Shaw. Love Captain Shaw.
Yeah.
Love Captain Shaw. Geordie LaForge's daughters
Yeah.
are fantastic as new characters. He basically, what Terry Matalas did is teach a masterclass on how to take an old and revered and beloved IP
Yeah.
and take a franchise and this is how you do it. This is how you respect the fans, you entertain, and you bring in new fans. I think that's it. I think it did set up potentially another show, Star Trek Legacy. You haven't seen it, so I don't want to say anything too spoiler. And I will say this: I know you weren't as high on episode 9 and 10 as I was, as I feel about episode 9 is the best episode 9 of anything I've ever seen.
Amen.
I'm referencing, of course, the hot garbage that is episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, which is the worst episode 9 of anything that's ever existed. But I really loved it. I also think what's interesting about it is this. You referenced Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. I love those Star Trek movies with the original cast.
Yeah.
And, the Star Trek The Next Generation series, we got sort of like 1.5 good movies. Right. I don't know. Like, I like Contact. Everybody says they like First Contact. Like, I do like it, but they never really got their due. Because I would say that the finale of Star Trek The Next Generation was better than any of the movies.
Yes.
Frankly. Here's what was cool that Terry Matalas did with the show. He made a 10-hour movie that did what a movie can't do, which is give your side characters their due. Every single character,
Okay.
from Beverly Crusher to, Riker, Worf, even Rafi, they all had character arcs that paid off.
Wow.
They
That's
all
beautiful.
paid off.
That's amazing.
They all paid off, and you could not do that in a movie because what happens with all these Star Trek movies, I don't think Star Trek makes good movies. What I mean is Star Trek as a storytelling format is not good as a movie. It's good as serialized television. Now you can tell one
Because it's
story.
episodic. It's very episodic.
It's episodic.
Yeah.
So you told this. So what you could do in 10 hours is you can have side characters like Geordie LaForge, and he's awesome. You can even bring in new characters like Captain Shaw, 7 of 9. They have everyone as their moments. Even Ensign Rowe had like such a great Michelle Forbes. She was just great.
I'm going to disagree with you on one point.
Sure,
Just
sure,
because
feel
I
free.
saw it last night,
It's all good.
I think Wrath of Khan was a great film. They were
No,
able
I'm
to
saying
make,
it is great.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that with having the
Well,
freedom,
I agree
the
with you
freedom.
that Star Trek is much, much better serialized than it
Yes.
is as a film. Typically, it's difficult to make it into a film.
Yeah.
But what they did with Wrath of Khan actually was they were able to take a series that with beloved characters,
Mm-hmm.
and especially that moment when my favorite moment in the film, and of course I just watched it, but Spock figures out, okay, we have to get the warp drive working. There's only one way to fix it. He doesn't even hesitate. He just looks to the side and then goes.
Yeah, and sacrifices his life for it. Yeah. So
And he knows he's going to do that when he thinks. He just goes, okay, and then goes. He does what a man needs to do in the moment. And that's such like an old school, masculine thing to do. Even though he's not a particularly masculine character, he gets done what needs to be done. Everybody tries to stop him, and he says, nope, this has to be done. And he does it. And it's so bold, and it's just it's great. It's a great moment in cinema.
It's a death that's earned.
Yeah.
That is, there's a video on the Film Courage channel, not to plug another channel that's not
we can plug it. Yeah, it's good.
I did a video on like why the death of Han Solo in The Force Awakens is one of the worst deaths in movie history.
Really is.
Taking the
Really
legacy
is.
character,
Yeah.
Han Solo, and you the way you kill him is not in front of the people he loves, because it's not about the character that's dying. Because
And there's no reason either.
There's no reason. He's dead. He's dead. It doesn't matter. What we want to see is the reaction of Leia Organa. What does she think? Luke Skywalker, his friend. He wasn't even there at the moment of his
should
death.
have had a Spock.
How do you screw that
He
up?
should have had a Spock Kirk moment.
Yes.
He should have had that.
Well, they should have reunited Han, Luke, and Leia in
At
one
some point.
in
Yeah.
one scene. But what Terry Matalas did is he reunited the cast of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Not only put them in several scenes together, told an adventure and a story. The other thing is this. Here's what Star Wars does wrong, and The Mandalorian, we were talking about that earlier. What Star Wars does is all their things are member berries. It's jangling keys. Look at this. Look at the Star Wars thing. See? Remember that scene where Finn was like going through that bag and he found like the little stunner ball that Luke was training with, and it was there for a goof because you laughed because it was so.
I have to take issue with one thing. We did get to see how Leia reacted to Han's death when she hugged Rey and consoled her, because that character that she had met for 2 seconds needed that consoling, even though Chewbacca.
I'm sure that was a Kathleen Kennedy decision.
I think that was a J.J. Abrams decision.
Yeah, what a moron! That guy should not direct traffic after Star Wars.
But you set up a perfect contrast, because you're talking about how in this new Picard season they have these character arcs for all of these characters, and they beautifully pay off these character arcs. Yeah, precisely the opposite of what was done in the sequel trilogy. I mean, Han Solo's character arc. What is it? Hey, I'm back, everybody.
He's back to his episode 4 stage. Like, he reverted instead of evolving.
And Leia doesn't have a good character arc. Luke doesn't have a good. They don't care about any of these characters.
He was General Solo. The Star Trek or Star Wars sequels, people will look back on as the biggest missed opportunity in movie history. Each of those movies should have made $3 billion.
Have you seen?
And you're right. Not only did they make terrible movies that didn't make as much money as they should have made, they ruined and destroyed the Star Wars franchise, because you can make. Look, I agree with you. Mandalorian season 1 and 2, I enjoyed. I thought it was like, it felt like Star Wars. It felt like Jon Favreau understood Star Wars, which is a Western, right? And by the way, Jon Favreau, he was up to direct episode 7 of Star Wars, and it didn't happen. He should have done it. We probably wouldn't even know each other. Yeah. Because we'd be too obsessed with how great Star Wars was. We wouldn't have even met. But okay, real quick, because unfortunately I got to go. I got to go to the meetup.
we got to pitch your documentary.
But real quick, the thing is that Terry Matalas did right was Star Wars does jangling keys when they do member berries. Like, remember this, remember that, remember this, remember that. Terry Matalas, when he throws something in, it's meaningful. There's a scene in Picard. I don't remember which episode of Picard season 3. Data is sort of battling in the mind realm with Lore, and they're having kind of a battle over dominance of Data, and pulls out a thing, and it's Tasha Yar. Okay, wow. It wasn't just there to be a member berry; it was meaningful with the way that Terry Matalas used these things that we remember from Star Trek. The way he used it was in a way that was respect. It had meaning. It wasn't just there of like, look, there's an outfit in the background. People in Hollywood, they don't understand that these things have meaning attached to them. They're not just things. It's not just.
And he's doing a sort of a sequel of Next Generation.
Yes.
About the characters from Next Generation. It's not like Next Generation, the new class. And
exactly.
And then you have these characters show up as, with cameos. It's about them. It's their story.
Precisely.
Did you see any of the footage of people reacting to episode 8, season 2 of Mandalorian when Luke finally comes back?
Yes, I saw those. That was great.
People are bawling, crying, watching this, because it meant so much to them that Luke get the kind of respect that he deserved finally. Right. It was just like, how could you not think to do that? And then Favreau comes in, probably pissed off about the sequels. I can't speak for him, but I imagine so. Yeah. Goes, you know what? Let's give Luke the send-off he deserves. Let's give him the continuation from Return of the Jedi that he deserves.
Well,
and
it's
people
impossible.
Are crying because of it.
It's impossible now, unless they deep fake a proper Star Wars sequel trilogy. But they hired the wrong person. Oh, yeah. They hired the wrong person. By all accounts, on paper, Kathleen Kennedy seemed like a great choice to run that company, but she ran it into the ground. Yeah, and she destroyed heroes to a generation. Like, how do you sit there with, if you're a father to a young son or daughter, and how do you sit there after watching Return of the Jedi, and they say to you, they made a sequel to this? What happens to these beloved characters after? Jeez. They don't fly off into the sunset. And the one thing, I don't want to ruin anything, but you could just kill characters in something. You know what's fine? It's fine for them to just ride off into the sunset. They used to do that in westerns. You know, you can just fly the spaceship off into the star. You can do that. You don't have to kill a character off. I don't get it. It's insulting.
Yeah.
And there's a reason that there are a lot of people talking about this. And it's worthy of discussion. It's worthy of, because it's our identity. I loved Luke Skywalker as a kid. I love. You know why did I love Luke Skywalker? In spite of everything going wrong, he was an optimist.
Yeah.
I'm an eternal optimist. I saw The Last Jedi, and I didn't hate it because let me finish because. Trying to hold
We're
you
all
back.
trying to jump in here, Chris.
Yeah, because I thought it was a setup to a return. The Rise of Skywalker was literally, I thought to myself, and I did a video about it, that he was going to come from the spirit realm of the Jedi and bring back a whole force to set everything right in the galaxy. It was literally like, you look at a character like Indiana Jones. The first Indiana Jones movie, which is called Raiders of the Lost Ark. Right. Not Indiana Jones and the
Raiders.
It's just stupid. It's called Raiders of the Lost Ark. He gets the shit kicked out of him. That whole movie. He doesn't. He has a win, then he loses. Then he wins, and he loses.
He's a vulnerable human being.
One step forward, two steps back. He screws up. We love that in a hero. The hero is constantly beat and then finally overcomes in the end. And he's reduced to a terrible cameo. And then the ending of The Rise of Skywalker is an awful ripoff of Titanic.
Oh yeah, actually, that's a fascinating idea.
When Kate Winslet's character is asked what her name is, she takes the name of Jack. She takes his name when she's asked what her name is, and Ray, for no reason at all that cannot be understood,
it's
for
the name of
some
the show.
stupid reason.
Yeah, because they wanted to tie it in.
Wait,
The
are
Rise
you
of
saying
Skywalker.
J.J. Abrams stole something from a better movie and put it in his movie?
Yes, that's the only
That
thing.
never happened.
Well, I think J.J. Abrams is a fraud. I don't think that he should be allowed near anything.
Yeah.
I think that he is responsible for destroying Star Wars with that first movie.
Yeah.
And it's an embarrassment. And I remember all my friends loved Force Awakens. They thought it was great. And I'm like, are you kidding? This thing is garbage. Then when I saw
just
Last
copied
Jedi,
and pasted New Hope.
Right.
They just copied and pasted it and then made, we can't do a Death Star, so let's do a Death Planet. Totally different.
Star Killer base, so stupid. But then I thought with Last Jedi, like, okay, maybe they know what they're doing. I falsely assumed that I thought there's a reason for all of
Everybody
this.
thought of that about Lost as well.
Yeah, no, exactly. Lost is another example.
See, Abrams is great at tricking you into thinking that he knows what he's doing. He's like, no, there's a cool ending coming up, guys. No, there's totally a cool ending. What's the ending?
Mystery box?
I don't know.
Mystery box? I don't know.
I don't know.
It's
I don't know,
insulting. It's insulting, and he's a fraud. And he hasn't directed anything since Rise of Skywalker, and he shouldn't, because he took that franchise and destroyed it. And then Kathleen Kennedy, with her ego, basically is just is
she's
trampling on everything.
I blame feminism for all of this. I feel like her feminist obsession has ruined Star Wars.
Yes.
But I think this conversation has led to one conclusion, which is that Star Wars, if you want to bring Lucasfilm, if you want to bring Star Wars back, you have to hire the four of us to write the next show and or movie. And same with Picard, because you're concerned that the next Picard season isn't going to be anything like as good as
There's
3.
another Picard season?
This was the last
Oh,
one.
this was the last
That's
one.
it. Okay.
Because
So now we're
you were
talking Star Trek
suggesting
Legacy.
that it was like an anomaly.
No. Well, yes. Well, I think the reasons for that are that the people that are currently in charge of Star Trek. I think this is a one and done.
Right. So
Terry
put
did a
us
great-
in charge of Star Trek, and you'll get some good stuff.
Well, or just hire Terry and have him. I just don't understand what the thinking is with people who work at the positions that are
The
in charge.
executives, the
Well, the executives. Let's look at this. If people ate your pizza and they said your pizza sucked, you would,
probably change your recipe.
change.
Yeah.
You wouldn't blame the person who ate the pizza for why your pizza tastes
Well,
terrible.
you're just racist.
Yeah.
You don't like pepperoni because you're a racist.
Well, that was the thing also bugged me about Kenobi, which is awful, terrible show. Where that character of Reva was just an awful character. Was just sort of
they're so
poorly
obsessed with this
conceived.
idea of, okay, do we want to bring in charismatic actors or do we want to bring in black lesbians? Because that
Right.
seems to be their thing. Like, we got to fill these categories now because of
Check
equity or
box.
some bullcrap. Yeah,
Check
yeah.
box.
But and that's how they cast now, and it's ridiculous. And actually, when I first saw LaForge's daughter, that was my instinct. I thought, okay, that's what they're doing because they do it so much now. I've been conditioned.
You'll see later
really
in the
good,
show.
though.
she's
No, well,
really
but
good, genuinely good.
But here's the funny thing: as soon as they said it's LaForge's daughter, just because of that nostalgia, value, I was just like, oh, okay, I like her.
Yeah.
Because you love LaForge, of course you love LaForge,
yeah.
and he wasn't hired because he was. I mean, obviously, Star Trek has always been like diversity is a big deal, but I mean that actor, LeVar Burton. He was a charismatic guy. I mean, he was.
Yeah,
they hired him for a reason. It wasn't just because he's black. Like that's how they hired.
Well, they
people
didn't
today.
bring his daughter in to go, Dad, you're doing everything wrong. Let me show you the right way to do it.
Yeah.
And that's what Disney does with most of their products is
Right.
they come in and say, I mean, think about it.
That's the rumor
Even
about
Han
Indiana
Solo-
Jones. Yeah,
Well, even Han Solo couldn't fix the Millennium Falcon. Rey needed to fix the Millennium Falcon.
Of course
because
she
she
did.
knew how to fix it better for some reason.
It's such a great quotable line. I bypassed the compressor. How many times have we among us just quoted some of the great lines from the sequel trilogy?
Yeah, it happens all the time.
All right, let's wrap this up. Okay, the whole reason we decided to do this, Chris Gore has got an amazing documentary out. If you know anything,
thank
if you ever watched G4 when you were younger, if you watched Attack of the Show, which is essentially how you became super famous, this gentleman has decided, you know what, I'm going to do a documentary about that previous life that I had, about all my friends back in the day. And he just screened it for us last night. And let me tell you, it's hilarious and it's awesome. I mean, it's a really professionally done, brilliant documentary. This thing should be hugely successful. I didn't hear about it until last night, so I feel like few people have.
And now that I know about Chris Gore's obsession with going to the bathroom in movies, that little segment where he peed in the car makes so much more sense.
Yeah, true. Yeah, you
Kept some realism.
I fought for that. I fought for that to be in there.
So tell us a little bit about your documentary, where we can find it, and why people should watch this thing.
Well, Attack of the Doc is a love letter to G4 TV and its primary flagship show, Attack of the Show. But it's also bringing people back to an era when nerd culture wasn't so divided. We had conversations. We could respectfully disagree with each other, even on the internet.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Except for Star Trek versus Star Wars fans. They were always murdering each other.
But that
left
was
and
always
right.
a fun argument. I
No,
never took that
obviously,
argument
yeah.
seriously. It was always fun to hear I love hearing, I actually love to talk to people I disagree with because I want to hear what is your argument.
Of course.
And it's like, it's the only, to me, talking to someone I disagree with vehemently about a topic is an opportunity for me to learn something.
And it's also a safe debate. If you're arguing abortion, there's a very strong possibility you will never talk to that person ever again for the rest of your life. But if you're talking about Star Wars versus Star Trek, you can go home friends.
It's fun debate. And so, look, I expect politics to be divisive.
Yeah.
It just sort of is by its very nature. I never expected nerd culture to become divided. That's like stuff that we love. You either like this, you don't, it's fine. But it has become because these stories have become politicized. It's become, we were talking earlier about the so-called racist Star Wars fans who didn't like Reva are the same fans who were begging for Lando Calrissian, played by Billy D. Williams, to please come back. Yes. Are those the same people? Are they racist? They want Lando to be in their movie? Like, you can't be selectively calling your fans racist. Those companies should be embarrassed. The people running the social media at Lucasfilm should all be fired. And it's shocking to me that these people are still in the positions that they're in, running these franchises without any reverence for what came before. It disgusts me as someone who's a lifelong fan, and they should be embarrassed, not just fired. They should be kicked out with a boot out the front door. Anyways, okay, I'm going off.
Listen,
back to Attack of the Doc.
Listen, I agree.
Available now on
That's
Amazon.
what it's about.
I feel like, I know so many hardcore fans of all these projects, and they're not just white men. They always cast us as white men. As Asian dudes, black guys, who cares? But it's like, you're misogynistic and all this kind of stuff. I've never seen any of that kind of stuff.
I have never in the nerd community ever seen the kind of racism people are accused of ever. I've been going to Comic-Con since 1989, San Diego, and I went to many cons before that. Nobody cared. You know who I was friends with? I was friends with people, we like the same things. You like X-Men comics, cool. You watch Star Trek, you like Lost in Space, whatever it is. I don't care what it is, Star Wars, Star Trek. You like that thing, you're friends with that person because you're attracted by your same like. I never cared what ethnicity or gender anyone was, or even, it doesn't matter. In the nerd community is the most accepting community of people ever that I have known. All the stuff that they're accusing them of, it's a way to cover for their mistakes. back to Attack of the Doc.
Yeah.
And now available.
I actually wanted to ask you, Chris.
Sure, please.
A big part of Attack the Doc is Olivia Munn.
Yes.
And, she was one of those rare, like, gems where, she was a hot chick, but she could also hang with, like, the nerds, she had some nerd cred to her. And with the reboot of G4 on YouTube, with Frost going off on her rant about Olivia Munn was not there to be nice on the eyes for you, like basically shaming every man who thought Olivia Munn was hot. Yeah. Like there are parts in your documentary where you show the part where Olivia Munn dressed up as Slave Leia at Comic-Con and everyone was just like going gaga over her. Like, what are your thoughts on, the modern reboot of G4 kind of basically saying that everything old G4 did was sexist?
I got to get to this FNT meetup, guys.
Yeah.
No.
Look, well, you say it in the last song that Zach plays.
Look, the movie, people are saying, well, why didn't you put in anything about the new G4 and comment on it? It's like the movie is a comment on it.
Yeah,
the movie is a comment on it by showing what the reason there was a G4 reboot is because of the old G4. Yeah. You don't shit on the legacy of the old network. You wouldn't have a job at that network.
Was Kathleen Kennedy in charge of the
Yes,
G4
Kathleen
reboot?
Kennedy was. No, but sort of just by, I really wanted to show, like, look, if we just show this, that's a comment unto itself. And the song, the sort of primary song, which basically, says out loud what the theme of the film is you can't do that anymore.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
one of the songs.
That song's hilarious, by the way. I love it.
Well, there's an extended version that's over the credits, and we're releasing it as a music video. But there's even a.
You guys have got to see this movie, Attack of the Doc. It is funny, and it is a really good documentary.
Yeah, talk about member berries and nostalgia too.
Well,
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. It's, but also it's like I tried to in the opening montage take you back to the early 2000s, like Verizon commercials and video games and phones that weren't iPhones. Like that's all on purpose to kind of like I'm taking you back.
See those clips.
It's an archival documentary with interviews with people who were all there, at the time. Anyway, yeah.
You know what the documentary is so good. It captures the heart of G4. But here's what it did for me. I watched G4, watched all the shows, and I liked it. But something happened when I watched your documentary. I fell in love with it. It's like a weird thing. Like, how sometimes nostalgia does that for you. But I looked back on it and said, oh my God, that was a time. Yeah. That was a moment in our lives. And your documentary captures it perfectly. If you watched G4 and Attack of the Show, you need to watch this documentary. So please go out there and get it.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. It's on, if you go to attackofthedoc.com or just look up Attack of the Doc on social media. It's on Amazon, YouTube Movies, Vimeo. Yeah. I think it's going to come to Vudu. Whatever the popular, where are the kids downloading the movies from?
I'm pretty sure it's Pirate Bay.
Pretty much. Yeah, there you go.
All right, everybody. Matt Kadish, Shane Montgomery, and the legend, Chris Gore. Thank you guys for going on the Alpha Critic, which is, we're probably going to get about 600 views on this. But
600 beautiful people out there.
That's right. You guys, best fans on YouTube. So thanks for watching. And I don't have a closer for this channel. For my Mr. Egan channel, I have like a great closer.
You've been reviewed.
You've been reviewed. All right, that's it for us. You guys have a good one. We'll see you the next time. Good night.
Alpha Critic.